Hello and welcome to another Nebula tutorial. This one is primarily intended for the Nebula app installed from Google Play. It will step you through setting up your first Nebula VPN using only Android devices. We start this tutorial on the Galixis.com website because this is where you'll find the free evaluation download for other supported platforms. You'll also find detailed documentation. The documentation provides greater detail of everything we're going to show in this tutorial. There's also a growing list of tutorials to help you become acquainted with Nebula and how to implement it in your projects. The website also has the Nebula store where you can purchase the source code packages. First, I'll explain what Nebula is, how the free evaluation is different from the purchase version, and what useful purposes the free version provides. Nebula is for engineers of commercial products, computer science students, hobbyists, or anyone with basic Java programming knowledge who is interested in building a remote or mobile application. Nebula provides the foundational Java source code for building a self-hosted, peer-to-peer virtual private network, or VPN, of multi-platform devices. It makes the development of network service applications for Internet of Things, robotics, private messaging, remote gaming, and other applications fast and easy. The source code is intended to be used in an integrated development environment, or IDE. The APK package opens in the Android Studio IDE, and its output is for Android-based phones, tablets, or single-board computers. The JAR package opens in the IntelliJ IDE, and its output is used for Linux, Windows, or Mac OS platform devices. The bin package opens in the Arduino IDE, and its output is used for any compatible device that has network capability, like the popular 8266 Wi-Fi modules. The free version is the executable binary output file from the purchased Nebula source code. A free version limits the VPN to 4 devices, and the code and presentation windows cannot be changed by the user. The demonstration commands available in the free download can be useful if you're only using up to 4 devices, 3 of which can go mobile, and you only want to transfer files, stream camera video, locate a device, have what you say on one device be repeated on another, or control a couple of output pins on an 8266 Wi-Fi module using either your voice or a web page. You won't know how the commands work or be able to change them, but they do provide useful functionality in some cases. If you installed the Nebula app from Google Play, it will always open to this startup screen. It gives you a link to the Galixis.com website where you have access to everything relating to Nebula. To bypass this screen, just click on the Continue to Nebula button, and it will go to either the installation screen for new devices or the Nebula running screen if the device is already a member of a VPN. Nebula will run on devices that use Android version 4.4 or later. On versions 5 or later, users must give specific permission for apps to use certain features of their device. Nebula requests feature permissions only on new device installation. Nebula, as supplied by Galixis Networks, will never collect or use any user data for any purpose outside of what's required to run Nebula. If you see this permission request, click OK, then select Permissions on the Nebula app info screen that opens. These are the permissions that Nebula needs for full evaluation. It's assumed that all permissions will be granted. Nebula is for application development. The permissions, How and when they're requested and verified will change according to an app's requirements. Nebula does not, in all cases, verify that a permission has been granted, so an exception failure may occur, and unless the log output is being monitored, you won't know why it failed. Grant all permissions, then use the Device Back button to return to the installation screen. This is where installation of a new device begins. All Nebula devices require a name. The only restriction for the name is that it must be unique for each device, and it cannot contain a comma or an up-caret character. Keeping the name short will avoid clutter in the logs and other screens. Check Device 1 to start a new VPN. All VPNs need at least one named or static public IP address in order to use devices that are outside your private network space. The Nebula code assigns Device 1 as the VPN master, and it has special requirements. Please read the Nebula documentation under the heading Set up Nebula VPN to become familiar with these requirements. With Purchase Nebula, you can assign the central functions like Database Master and Data Stream Master to different devices in order to balance your app workloads. This screen is where you set up Device 1 to be the VPN master. Port forwarding is only required if you want to have mobile devices contact home devices. Nebula and its demonstration commands can be evaluated on a local private Wi-Fi network without port forwarding through your router. How to port forward is detailed in the documentation. The Uses Database checkbox applies to the specific device, and any APK or JAR device can host a database. However, the read and write database demonstration commands assume that the database exists on Device 1. The Uses Crypto checkbox applies to the VPN. You can check it to encrypt all data sent over the public internet. If left unchecked, all data is sent in clear text. The public address or DNS applies to the VPN. If you double-click the text box, it will show your public address. It's perfectly acceptable to use the public IP address, but be aware that your internet service provider can change it, thereby disrupting your VPN. To avoid address issues, Galixis Networks recommends using a DNS or Dynamic Name Service address. Your router may include a DNS feature, or there are also several DNS providers where you can obtain a named address either for free or with a minimal service charge. The last item pertains to the specific device and is only used if Nebula detects more than one valid internet connection. Typically, Android phones or tablets can only use Wi-Fi, but some single-board computers that can run Android may have an Ethernet wired connection as well as Wi-Fi. You can click the net number to select the network connection you want to use if there is more than one. The text box shows the local IP address the device is using. Click Execute to make Device 1. Scroll through the user displayed text to review the install info, then click Exit to finish. After a device has been installed, Nebula will open to its main running screen. The top line shows the device name with the address and port number its server is listening on. Here you can select a command, a device to send it to, and a button to send it with. Commands that do not involve streaming, like camera video or send or get file, can usually be sent and run on the same device. Select Ping and your Device 1, then click Send. You'll see the result in the text box. Nebula keeps the running screen on, so if your device is not powered, be careful of battery usage. Only Device 1 must be powered and running the Nebula app at all times. The last item on the running screen is the Run User Test Code button. It has no purpose for free evaluation, as test code cannot be implemented. With Purchase Nebula, it's a tool to quickly test some developer code before implementing it. Now open the Nebula app on another device. You'll have to grant permissions if requested, then click Add to VPN. If the device is provisioned and can send and receive SMS and text messages, you'll see a screen for adding an email account. Nebula sends commands to mobile devices via SMS because service providers control the IP address. Also, you must have port forwarding set up in order for the mobile device to respond to a command. Explaining how Nebula handles communication with mobile devices is fairly complex and outside the scope of this tutorial, but you can read all about it in the documentation. Commands to, from, and between mobile devices can be fully evaluated with a free version of Nebula, but if you're not set up and ready yet, you can just click Cancel if your device shows this screen. Otherwise, enter the email credentials and click Save. Once again, all Nebula devices require a unique name, and any Nebula APK or jar device can host a database. However, the free version assumes that only device 1 has a database. Here's where you enter the address, a colon, and the port that device 1 is listening on. Added devices can have multiple valid IP addresses. Not so much for Android, but the Nebula code and screens are the same for jar devices running Linux, Windows, or Mac OS. Devices added to the VPN can also use a static IP address if it's available. You'll use this especially if you're adding an instance of a cloud server device. Here you can verify or edit the SMS email credentials for mobile devices. You can use the same email credentials on all your mobile devices, but they associate with individual devices, not the whole VPN. When you have at least a name with the IP address and port of device 1, then click Execute to add the device. You'll see it show up on all other Nebula VPN devices. You can then review the install log shown in the user text box. When you're finished, click the Exit button to go to the device running screen. You now have a fully functional Nebula VPN with 2 members. Send some commands between devices to become familiar. Some commands only operate under specific conditions. Files can only be transferred between specific directories. And voice control commands only respond if the keywords hello or time are used. You can read about all the native and demonstration commands in the documentation. A purchased Nebula package provides you with the source code and a free personal license to use the patented communication protocol of Nebula. Adding your own commands and user interfaces is quick and easy. Once you become familiar with Nebula, you'll see how easily it replaces REST, SOAP, MQTT, and other web services. Also, how it makes code more portable and easier to maintain. The Nebula code is written to operate as HTTP POST operations, but can easily be reconfigured to run as a common gateway interface. In fact, Galixis Networks also offers a C library of our communication protocol called Andromeda. While fully compatible with Nebula, it also leverages the CGI bin capability of Apache and other open source servers. Thank you for trying Nebula. Galixis Networks engineers are available to answer your questions and offer hardware or programming support to get your application up and online.